Serious, campers of Reddit, what is the scariest, creepiest, most disturbing thing that has happened to you in the woods? Went on a group camping trip in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, only to wake up and hear something sniffing outside our tent. My immediate reaction was that it was likely a bear or some animal that came across our site, and just maybe my dumbass friends didn't tie up the garbage. Seconds later, I can hear the sniffing go to the tent next to ours, and everyone in mine grabs one another quietly to acknowledge we all were awake and were aware of what's happening outside. Moments later, a friend in another tent popped out and started to scream and make noise. He had a gun too, hoping it would scare off whatever animal was in our sight. Turns out, it wasn't an animal. It was some guy who had gone through our coolers/food and also decided it'd be okay to sniff our tents. Our friend chased him off, and we immediately packed our things and left. A year after the above incident, my dumbass friends and I went back to the nearby area, thinking what we encountered was a one-time incident. This time, we thought we'd outsmart any possible creepers, and instead of camping in our tents, we all slept in the beds of our trucks and SUVs. 'Cause they can't possibly sniff a Toyota Tacoma? Anyways, it's the middle of the night. I'm passed out in the back of my SUV when I suddenly feel a bright light on my face. Naturally, I would have woken up, cussed, and asked who was doing that. However, I instantly knew to pretend to be asleep and not let the individual know I was awake. I laid there next to my girlfriend, hoping she would do the same as I, and I kept an ear out for any unusual sounds, like sniffing. All I could hear was a friend snoring by the campfire. After the light left my car, I heard the person walk to the next truck and shine his light on my friends in there. I slowly looked up, and it ended up being some older guy, just standing there staring at everyone while they slept. I waited until he left the campsite, and I busted my ass out of that truck and woke up my friends, most of which had also been pretending to sleep, and realized what was going on. Not exactly camping, but kind of. I lived in a very small town once when I worked for my laptop. Like, population 200 small. I was in a small cabin in the woods, though next to the highway. One day, I was walking my dog and heard 2 gunshots somewhere nearby. Didn't think much of it, it's a hunting area, and it's kinda redneck-like. The next day, or the day after, a truck pulls up. I don't even know anyone in this town, so it's weird, and I'm put off. Guy calls me over, says he's my neighbor. Asked if I heard the shots, and I said yeah. He claims it was his neighbor taking potshots at his house, over a land dispute. Doesn't ask me to be a witness for him or anything, just if I heard. Okay. Seems really odd to me. Never met this guy before, and when I say neighbor, I mean 500 meters, 1 kilometer away out of sight. Guy sees my dog digging somewhere unimportant and, all of a sudden, starts trying to tell her not to do that. Gets out, and she's iffy of him, says here watch, calls her over. Grabs her and tries to do the stupid Cesar Chavez dominance, hold the dog on their back thing, for really no reason. She starts yelping. I'm like, dude, stop. He asks me whether I have any guns myself, I say no. Says he is a great dog trainer. He asks me to go over and mow his lawn, and please ensure to bring your dog. In the strangest way, just like that. Please ensure you bring my dog's name. I can't describe it, but his mannerisms and the way he talked were just plain creepy, especially that line. He leaves soon after, and I'm thinking, I just told this guy, not only that I heard the gunshots, but that I'm unarmed here. How do I even know it was his neighbor like he claimed, and not in fact that this weird dude has shot someone at his home and is trying to see who might have heard or witnessed? I wouldn't go to his house, not a chance. Horrible feeling. Then he kept showing up asking why. Calling and texting asking why. I gave him my number before realizing how weird he was. Really adamant I go over there. Turns out the guy is a total alkie, lost his wife, lost his job, lost everything, very dangerous mental state. Nothing to lose. The small store owners in town explained the guy to me. He's apparently the most hated guy in the valley, bad reputation. I'm now really freaked out. I found it very hard to sleep after that. Cabin in the woods, nobody nearby that would hear any commotion, ample angles for the place to be approached from the woods, and just a can of bear spray and a knife. And the guy knows I have no guns. I would be kept up for hours listening at night for any movement outside, as it was dead silent there. One night, middle of the night, my dog starts to growl. Then growls more. I didn't hear anything, but it didn't matter. Every room in that cabin had a window but the bathroom. I just got up, grabbed the knife plus bear spray, and locked myself in that bathroom for hours listening. I think I eventually fell asleep in there. I don't think I've ever felt that kind of dread. I just pictured this lunatic sneaking up with a shotgun to take me out, for maybe having heard him murder someone with a gun days earlier. It was just awful. I moved, But unfortunately, the new landlords were equally creepy, and even started trying to steal my dog, even though they had 3. Literally, I heard them discussing it, how they had to make themselves the in crowd so that she'd want to be with them, and hand feeding her dog food when they thought I wasn't looking. It must have just been the small town thing, totally strange people in that town for the most part. They went to the market one morning, I packed all my things into my uninsured van with no license, and my pup, and bailed that town and never looked back. Good God, it was hills have eyes mates, I'm telling you. We like to hike 3 to 5 miles down a trailhead in deep Georgia. One night the temperature dropped into the low 20s, which is really rare for mid-fall. We got a solid fire going, and the heat mixed with a full belly put us all to sleep. I woke up to my buddy tapping my foot with a stick. I looked up at him, and he nodded toward the fire. There were 2 wild boars kicking up dirt around the dying fire. We didn't have any sort of weaponry except a hand axe that was out of our reach. My friend and I laid there completely silent, watching these 2 for about an hour till the fire died completely down, and they moved on. If you don't know, wild boars in Georgia are easily 150 pounds, pissed all the time, and prone to gore literally anything. We were really lucky we didn't spook them. Safari guide here. Woke up one morning, with something very warm, rather soft, and comfy on my back. Realized my back was against the canvas of the tent. Realized it was an animal. It was a really cold winter night. Temperatures dropped close to 0 here in the Lowveld. As I moved a bit, I heard the voice from my buddy, from his tent. He spoke a bit hushed, and with a definite tremble in his voice, "The Africa bug, are you awake?" Stupid me replied with a strong voice, "Yes." The animal next to me got up, and, luckily, ran away. It was a big male lion. I live in a rural town surrounded by mountains and forests, so camping is almost a weekly event, even in winter. The one I can't shake is when one of my friends and I broke off from our group of other 16 to 19-year-olds to camp by a better fishing spot about a mile away. We only brought one tent for the group, so we built a lean-to against a large boulder in a clearing. I couldn't sleep because I had the feeling something was watching us. I assumed it was a mountain lion, which isn't that big of a deal considering their behavior, so I threw some more logs on the fire. I looked up from the fire, and under the light of a full moon, there was a man standing at the edge of the clearing about 80 yards away. I was frozen and couldn't take my eyes off him while he assumedly stared back. He walked off in the opposite direction after about a minute or 2. I doubt he had any ill intentions, but I sat there holding my friend's 357 the whole night. My siblings and I went camping once. An incredibly powerful storm comes through, and the lightning is just slamming the lake and crawling endlessly through the clouds while an endless roar goes on and on. The winds and roar got so intense that we considered abandoning the tent for the car, considering the tent was lifting off the ground. We end up running to the car and climb in and proceed to watch our tent collapse and be blown into a nearby tree. The car was shaking, so we decided to get out of there and drive about 20 minutes to my grandpa's house to spend the night. The next day we went back, and part of the campground was closed because a small tornado had apparently gone through the campground the night before. Trees were blocking some of the roads, whether it was during or after our adventure, we have no idea, but from what we could tell, it was pretty close to where we were. We cleaned up our campsite and left. I have never witnessed a storm so powerful and frightening before. I also never found my sleeping bag. My family went camping every summer when I was growing up. We usually bounced between Virginia Beach, Assorted, and this god-awful place called Westmoreland. On one trip, we were in Assorted, near the beach, and we had 2 tents set up in different parts of the site. Sometime in the middle of the night, my mom woke up, which woke me. She was sitting up straight but completely still, and I looked over at what she was staring at. In the moonlight, there was the silhouette of what looked like an old woman looking into our tent. Long wiry hair and everything. I was young, so it terrified me, and I started asking my mom what that was, who was outside. Once I made a noise, it spooked the old woman, and she took off, and that's when we realized she was actually one of the feral ponies that live on the island. We had set up that particular tent on one of their trails, and they were going down to the beach. I was out walking around the bush hunting for upland birds. I walked through a bit of a valley as a shortcut to get to another area, when I came across a guy standing on the trail with an AR-15 at the ready position. Instantly, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up instinctively, knowing this wasn't a place I wanted to be, trying my best to stay calm. "Hey, just out bird hunting. How are you doing?" "Fine." Long pause. "I'm hunting deer. Deer season wasn't open, our 15s are not legal for deer, and he wasn't dressed for deer hunting. As a matter of fact, he looked homeless, hadn't changed his clothes, or bathed or shaved in several days obviously, and looked emancipated. Think of the scariest 50-year-old meth addict you can think of, and put an AR-15 in his hands, and you're probably close. Do you know the best way for me to go to find some birds? Well, I imagine you might find some back the way you came. His voice got noticeably sharper with the back the way you came, and I obviously took the hint. I don't know if there was a meth lab, or what just down the trail, but I was certainly happy to leave. I reported the incident to the sheriff the next day, but I don't know that anything ever came of it. My parents' story, not mine. They were on a canoe trip way up in nowhere, Saskatchewan, far from any semblance of civilization. One morning, they hear a rustling outside their tent. Still half asleep, my dad sits up and tries to figure out what is going on. The noise is loud and very close. Before he can collect himself enough to investigate, his whole side of the tent collapses on top of him. The weight lifted quickly. Now entirely awake, my parents scrambled to open the tent flap and figure out what was going on. About 10 feet away was a spooked black bear, staring confused and concerned at the tent. After being yelled at a bit, it ran off. We figured it had been foraging in the bushes right behind the tent and lost its balance. So, my dad can truthfully say he has been sat on by a bear.